good morning, good evening, depending on where you are in the world. Hi, everybody. This is Kathy Frey from IMCO, from the Integrated Maternity Healthcare Organisation, and welcome to another webinar. And this week we've got the beautiful Tasha Jennings. Say hello, Tasha.
Hi, how are you? Good to be involved.
Oh, it's so great to have you here. And it's so wonderful combining everybody from around the world. And so today the topic, of course, is, that being that best mum starts well before birth. And so Tasha's got some fantastic information that she's going to be going over with us today. And for those of you signing in, please do go into the chat. Please let us know whereabouts in the world you are and what your maternity health profession is. Or perhaps you might be a woman who is expecting a baby. And so let us know who you are and where you are. That would just be wonderful. And then, of course, down the bottom, so down the bottom is the chat, and down the bottom you should be able to see also the Q&A. So if you've got any particular questions that you would like to ask, do put those in there and we'll make sure that we get through them during this webinar. So yeah, so go on to the chat, everybody, and let us know who you are and where you are. That would just be awesome. So let me introduce our beautiful Tasha. And Tasha is from conceivebaby.com.au, which she'll explain a little bit more about. But Tasha Jennings helps proactive women and couples optimize their fertility and their well-being to create those healthy pregnancies and healthy babies. And of course, the more that we study, the more that we realize that what's happening before that conception has such an impact. So I know that we're speaking to the converted here, but it's great to get it from the horse's mouth, so to speak, as to really what is the advice that we should be giving clients. And she and Tasha has her own private online consultations and her own resources, which she'll explain. But her 20 years of professional experience as a naturopath and nutritionist, combined with her personal experience overcoming fertility challenges, instilled in her a strong empathy and desire to help those with fertility challenges. Isn't it always the way? What we go through inspires us to help others. And Tasha is also the author of the Fertility Diet and Vitamins Guide. And she's also the host of the Conceive Baby podcast and keynote speaker at quite regularly at various medical conferences, and of course an expert contributor to some pretty major media publications as well. And she works very closely with the IVF clinics and specialists. We were just discussing that before going live, and how fantastic it is to have these IVF specialists now sort of realizing it's a jolly good idea to also refer their clients to see a nutritionist and naturopath. So welcome, Tasha. Welcome along.
Thank you for that lovely introduction. I know, yes, we were speaking offline, and I love what you're doing, integrating the medical profession and natural approaches. And I'm very passionate about that. Obviously, I've done that pretty much my whole career and now work closely with IVF clinics. And I'm married to a specialist cardiologist, so totally not related, but I love the merger.
Oh, that's so interesting. So you're married to the medical specialist, may not be infertility, but that's a lovely combination.
It was interesting. People sort of say, how are you a naturopath married to a doctor? Aren't they supposed to, not get along? And I'm quite the opposite. We're all wanting the same outcome. And that's why I really love, we're just saying, my number one referral base would be IVF clinics now, who can see the benefits that creating those healthy 90 days prior to them getting hold of the eggs can create much better outcomes.
Yeah. So good. Okay, well, I know you've got a bit of a list that you are wanting to go over today of stuff information you want to pass through to us, which is really exciting. I've seen the list and it's fantastic. In fact, I'll just run over some of it so everybody's got a little bit of an overview.
Yeah.
So the points that Tasha plans to cover today are going to include the 90-day development of the egg and why preconception health is so important, key preconception and pregnancy nutrients, the best supplemental sources and dietary sources, such as four things like folate, vitamin D, choline, iron, etc. And then there's the whole folate versus folic acid conversation, why iron should not cause constipation and how to optimize uptake, the mother gene and what it means, and nutritional blood tests, which ones to request and what to look for, and finally best diets for fertility and pregnancy. So yeah, so we've got a few things that we're going to try and get through in this time. So I'm just going to zip up now and really let you take over, Tasha, and I'll let you know of any questions that come through, and or I might throw the odd one in there myself.
Yeah.
So welcome, Tasha.
Thank you. Look, feel free to throw the questions in there. I'm very used to that and happy to help people, and glad people are really involved and interested in this topic. This is something I'm very passionate about, and as you mentioned, had my own fertility struggles, and we were trying to fall pregnant. I think that's what really led me to this industry. I have been in as a naturopath for about 20 years now, but really focused on fertility since our journey. And we now have a 5 and 8 year old. So obviously was quite successful in there, but really wanted to help other people have the information that I was lucky enough to have. And as you mentioned, it's that 90-day journey that I'm really passionate about. As women, we've had our eggs our entire life. They were formulating now in a mother's womb. So they were there our whole life, but it's that last 90 days when they develop from the primordial follicles into that mature egg. And about 100 of them start that journey 90 days before they're released at ovulation. And optimizing the environment that those eggs are developing, we now know affects the viability of the egg really significantly. And the chromosomal changes that determine how viable that egg is going to be. Because as human beings, we're actually not that good at reproduction. Actually, so many things need to align for a pregnancy to occur. Even in our 20s, about 25% of the eggs we release at ovulation aren't viable. But we know if we can optimize the environment that they're developing in, we can help to optimize those chromosomal changes to create a healthy, viable egg. And this is becoming more and more important as we, as women, are having babies later. I know I was in my 30s, and most women I do see are in their 30s, if not 40s. So we really want to optimize those 90 days prior to that egg coming out to give you the best opportunity to create a healthy pregnancy. And that does go for sperm health as well. I'm really, really important about that too. And there's a great, I won't go into too much about sperm health, but a great episode on the Conceive Baby podcast. If you head to tashajennings.com.au, I spoke with Assistant Professor Adam Watkins about the role of sperm in preconception health and also for the long-term health of the child. So jump on that one. I send it to all my men who aren't on board. But for women,
it's wonderful.
It is. And look, a lot of them do think, especially with recurrent miscarriage, I can get her pregnant, so it's not me, it's her. She can't carry the pregnancy. And sperm health is implicated in recurrent miscarriage, particularly before the 10-week mark. So getting a healthy sperm is critical. So I like them to hear that without me preaching to them. I can just go listen to that, see what you think, and come back.
Yeah, and we know that sperm, of course, impact preeclamptic toxemia as well. So,
absolutely.
Yeah, it's great to get these guys on board.
It is the development of the placenta. That so much is implicated by sperm health. And now even the seminal fluid is implicated in the lifelong health of the child. You can, as I said, in my opinion, the best investment you can make in your future child's health happens in the 12 months of pregnancy. And I say 12 months because we want the 3 months prior and the 90 days of pregnancy. That's the best investment in your child's health you can make. And I'm obviously really passionate about the 3 months prior, because that's when you can really optimize the DNA you're passing on. Once you've conceived, it's somewhat set in stone. You've passed on that DNA, and we nurture it and nourish it. And obviously lots we can do in that developmental phase. But during the 3 months prior to conceiving, we can optimize the health of the DNA you're passing on to your future child, which optimizes the health of the pregnancy, the health of the baby, and lifelong health of the future child.
And don't you find that a lot of the challenge perhaps is just getting the education across? Because you know, around about 50% of babies are planned or unplanned, pretty much half and half. And those, you know, so often as for midwives, particularly, you know, we don't even see that person until they're already pregnant.
And there is still lots we can do. So
lots
we can do even when they're
lots
pregnant.
that can be done at that point. So it's so often at that point you find that when the woman become pregnant is when they sort of suddenly think for the first time, oh my God, I'm this precious vessel. And they're thinking, oh, can I use that shampoo? And is that hair dye okay? And is that, you know, what is in that I'm eating? All these things that they didn't used to think about, they start to think about, and which is great, but it's just about getting that earlier, isn't it? Of having such a huge impact.
It is, and especially when people are struggling to conceive. And as I said, I kind of look back on our fertility journey, I'm almost grateful for it, that it made me far more aware of what I could do to help my future child before I even conceived. And that's why I love educating women about what they can do. And I'll really talk about the key nutrients, because I do see a lot of
go on to that, because I think that's so not understood.
And in fact misunderstood, even from a lot of the medical professionals that I work with. There is a limited understanding. As I said, I'm married to a cardiologist who did 6 weeks of nutrition training in a 16-year, you know, education. So it's not, you know, lack of wanting to help their patients, it's just not their area of expertise. So the critical nutrients that I'll talk about that you mentioned are folate, and we'll talk about why folate and folic acid are different. Choline, which I think most people haven't heard of, but is now the American Medical Association are recommending choline B in all prenatal supplements, because it is so critical to brain development, works alongside folate. Iron as well, and again, I believe iron is misunderstood. It shouldn't be causing nausea and constipation and taking big massive doses. So I'll start with folate, because we know how important folate is for the development of the neural tube. We basically can't sustain a pregnancy without folate. We really need it for DNA development, but we're totally reliant on dietary sources. We don't manufacture any folate in our body. We need to get it through our diet. But unfortunately, folic acid and folate are quite different. So I think we use the terms interchangeably. A lot of people do. But folic acid is the synthetic supplemental source of natural folate, which is what's being used in the body to do all this wonderful development. And unfortunately, around 50% of the population have difficulty metabolizing that folic acid into natural folate. It actually takes 4 steps in the body to be converted into a folate to a form that we can actually actively utilize. So, and that's affected by the MTHFR gene. Now, I won't dig into that. That's a whole new topic on its own, but I will just touch on the fact that there's 4 different variants of that gene that you can get. And none of them, I get a lot of people getting that gene tested, then freaking out because there is implications in, you know, ovarian dysfunction, outcomes of IVF, recurrent miscarriage because they're not getting their folate. But it doesn't mean it's, I guess, what we want to do. I love the quote from Hippocrates. It's far more important to know what sort of person has a disease than what sort of disease a person has. And I think that's particularly important for MTHFR. What we want to know is not just whether you have the gene, but how well the gene is functioning in you. The MTHFR a polymorphism. It's basically a spelling mistake in the RNA code is the way I like to see it. And like with any spelling mistake, I'm quite renowned for them. My brain goes far faster than I can actually keep up, and I'll type the email and there'll be spelling mistakes in there, but I might email you, Kathy, and you get that email and say, I can still read what you mean. I still understand, and I can see the spelling mistakes. But, you know, you might get that same email on a Friday night and you haven't checked your emails all day and you don't understand what I mean with those same spelling mistakes. So it's about providing, again, the right environment. If we can optimize the environment that that gene is in, we can get the best folate uptake. So what I like to test in women when I'm looking at their folate levels. So how do we check if someone's got enough folate? Basically, I guess is what, as medical professionals, we want to know. How do we know that they've got enough, that they're getting enough? Because unfortunately, a folate blood test doesn't cut it. A folate blood test will show that you have folate in your system, and that could be folic acid in your bloodstream. It doesn't show you're actually metabolizing it, absorbing it, and using it. So I never rely solely on a folate blood test, and I'm actually quite concerned if I see quite high levels, because that's generally indicating they're taking a folic acid supplement and it's not being metabolized and absorbed. It's just floating around in the bloodstream.
It's just floating around in that bloodstream and it's not actually getting in use. Okay.
Yeah. So I like to test. Look, I do work with a lot of specialists who will test MTHFR. Before I usually do that, I test homocysteine. Now, homocysteine is further down the pathway and helps us understand whether that folate is actually being metabolized and absorbed, and it has implications for pregnancy as well. So ideally, I want to see someone's homocysteine between about a 6 and an 8 prior to pregnancy and looking at their fertility. If it's higher than that, it can indicate they're not metabolizing sufficient folate. So don't pump them with tons and tons and tons and tons of folic acid, which is what we have done in the past, and some professionals will still do. What we want to do is look at the right form of folate. So there's three different forms of folate. You've got your folic acid, your folinic acid, and your methylfolate.
Mm-hmm.
I recommend a combination of folic acid and folinic acid for most people to help to optimize their uptake, plus dietary sources. And I can't stress that enough. Getting dietary sources is so, so, so important. I always give my patients a handout on optimizing dietary sources. The difficult thing with folate sources is it's a super unstable nutrient. So a lot is lost in cooking and processing. So you'll find that a lot of your processed food, anything with a barcode, has basically got folic acid, not folate, which is not going to be beneficial. So getting your food as close to the source as possible. So knowing where it came from, ideally your backyard or the farmer's market. But if you can't do that, a local grocer, or just trying to get them as fresh as possible in season. Veggies, your greens are your best source, and lightly cooked. So don't cook your broccoli like my nan used to and it's, killed of the folate. So fresh vegetables, lightly cooked, and getting the right form of folate. So 3 different forms, folic acid and folinic acid. So they're the 2 that I recommend for most people. I will prescribe methylfolate for some people. However, a lot of people think, okay, if I've got the MTHFR gene, I need the most active form of folate, which is methylfolate. That can actually cause side effects in people if you don't understand their pathways properly. So if you're not sure of how well their pathways are functioning and what they're doing, I don't recommend a methylated folate, which is available in some prenatal supplements. It was a scheduled nutrient up until, I think, 5 years ago. But it's now been unregulated. So it is being put into supplements, which does concern me because some people are taking it without understanding their pathways properly, and it can cause neurological symptoms, anxiety, depression, those sort of symptoms, which is often an issue in fertility anyway. So what I recommend, stay nice and simple. Folic acid and folinic acid, I recommend about 200 of folic acid and 300 of folinic acid. So you get that 500 of your folate plus your lovely dietary sources to optimize that folate uptake, and check their homocysteine. Make sure
that was a very, very interesting explanation of all of that. Fascinating. just a reminder, those that have come on board, welcome today to our IMCO Maternity Natural Health webinar series. And of course, you'd know that we've got Tasha Jennings on today, who is a nutritional naturopathic conception expert. And if you've got any questions for her, please do put them into the Q&A that's down the bottom, and we'll make sure that we get through those today. And thanks for those that are popping into the chat area to let us know where you are and who you are. And yeah, we'd love to hear from everybody else as well. But yeah, so Tasha's got the most fantastic topics that she's going to go through today. And I'm just finding myself sitting here quite riveted, just listening to your expertise on it. So I'm going to be quiet and let you carry on. I just wanted to welcome those that have signed in.
No, thank you. I'll reiterate that. Welcome, and thank you for being involved, and thank you for your passion in helping women create healthy babies. And I'm looking forward to helping you do that. So yeah, folate is critical. Getting the right form of folate, so not just smashing heaps of folic acid, getting the right form in the right dose, checking the folate levels and homocysteine levels, making sure that you're getting that great folate uptake. Because I'm really passionate. I think we were talking offline. My background is in product development for a large pharmacy company. I did their home brand vitamin range. So I know supplements inside out, and I'm really passionate about the nutrients actually getting to the bloodstream where they need to be. It's all well and good having them on the label of the bottle, which looks great and sells well, but what form is it in? Is it being properly absorbed? As I said, iron shouldn't constipate, and we'll get to that. It's generally the form you're taking it and the dose. So we need to get rid of that. If it's sitting in your gut constipating you, it's not actually in your bloodstream. It's not being absorbed. So the other nutrient that I did mention is choline, which I'm quite passionate about. And again, got another episode in a podcast with Professor Marie Cordial from Cornell University in New York. She's doing some amazing research on choline and its importance in preconception and through pregnancy, particularly through pregnancy, I have to say, for brain development. It works alongside folate in the development of the neural tube. So we know how important folate is. We now know choline is just as important for the development of that neural tube, which develops and closes in the first 5 weeks. And it's really important for brain development. And actually, it's one of the few nutrients where the recommended intakes actually increase in breastfeeding, because it's so important for brain development. It's
right, because you're dealing with a larger baby.
Yes.
You know,
and their brain is growing and absorbing,
exactly.
And
it's not a 7-pounder, now it's a 10-pounder, so it needs more. So that makes a lot of sense.
So taking a good supplement when you're breastfeeding that's providing choline, because breast milk is naturally really rich in choline, and we now know why, because it's super important for brain development, but actually fueling your own choline intake, because unfortunately 90% of us aren't getting enough. And I guess the reason for that is I call it the unknown nutrient, because most people don't even know what choline is. And that's largely because most of our nutrients, vitamin E's, vitamin A's, back in the 1940s, they were sort of classified. We worked out the RDIs, we put them in nutrition textbooks. Choline was really only, I guess, discovered for its benefits in 1998. Now, I don't know about you, but the 40s were before my time. But 98, it's a bit hazy, but I was definitely there for 98.
Yeah.
So it's relatively recent. So it isn't, even in some of the obviously specialists and GPs that may have even done their training prior to 1998, may not know about this important nutrient, which is now getting in medical textbooks. And now, as I said, the American Medical Association has recommended that choline be in all prenatal supplements because we're not getting enough. So it's involved in...
And tell us, what are the foods that have a lot of choline in them?
Yeah, choline-rich foods are largely meat sources. So vegetarians and vegans really need to monitor their intake. Look, I'm largely that myself. So you want to be looking at egg yolks are your richest source. So if they're vegetarians, egg yolks are a great source. Lecithin granules that you can get from a health food store are a really rich source. Oats, cauliflower. Again, I've got a list that I send my patients of folate and choline, and various lists that I send at different stages of their pregnancy for them. But yeah, meat sources and oats, whole grains. But yeah, your vegetarians really need to be sure that they're getting sufficient choline.
And especially your vegans.
Yes, you really need to be upping their
Yeah.
intake and monitoring their intake, because they won't
Right.
even be getting it from egg yolks. So lecithin granules is a great source, and you really just want to be optimizing the intake of the whole grains that are rich in choline, and getting a prenatal supplement. As we mentioned online, I did create a prenatal supplement, having a background in product development.
Yes.
And then struggling to fall pregnant myself. I was really passionate about, firstly, helping myself. I wanted to be able to get pregnant, obviously, and have a healthy baby. So I created Zycia, which means life. And, you know, it's really dedicated to promoting and supporting life in its earlier stages. So Zycia Natal Nutrients has everything that I wanted in there to help me conceive and for my baby. So just really low excipient, just what you need in there to get into your bloodstream, all the nutrients to actually be absorbed and metabolized. So I do have folic acid and folinic acid, choline in there, which is so critical. So,
And is that the same supplement that you would be suggesting to women? Say those that can't come and see you personally or have an individual consultation. So is that the same supplement that you'd suggest that they would be taking before conception?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It really should be taken. And I know I laugh with some of my girls who I want to get pregnant, but I want to have a baby in 5 years. Even take it alongside the pill. I know your husband might freak out, but the pill depletes the body of the most important preconception nutrients like folate, like B6. And unfortunately, I see a lot of women come off the pill, hormones go crazy, fall pregnant, and you can miscarry if you don't have that supply readily available. So you want, as soon as you stop the pill, you want a healthy supply of all those nutrients readily available in your system to create a healthy pregnancy right off the bat. So yeah, taking
and
it.
And that's the same supplement that they would be taking, so preconception, through the pregnancy, and then postnatally as well.
And postnatally as well.
Yeah. So this is just one a day kind of general day.
One a day.
Yeah.
Got everything they need in there. Like
show us a picture of it.
Yeah. Oh, I've got it behind me there. That's it there. So I've got a special offer on at the moment. I think we'll put in the link, but that you get a supply of this plus a copy of my book, The Fertility Diet, as well.
Okay. So it's fantastic, and we will put that into because everybody watching will be receiving an email that will give them links to this information. And look, the purpose of these webinars is not to be a platform of selling businesses and services and products and things, but it's very different when we've got somebody like yourself who is an expert and could not find that really good product that is what she knows the clients need. So you end up almost out of desperation saying, I need to invent this myself. So we love that, and then at least we can have clients who I used to sort of I'm not going to pick on any particular brands, but when it comes to pregnancy multivitamins, there's kind of that sort of saying that sometimes the ones that are the most popular are simply because they have the biggest advertising budget. Absolutely. Not necessarily that they're the best quality. And so it's just fantastic what you're doing. And so tell us more about iron as well. As a midwife, I tend to be quite fussy in that I'm very keen. I'm not a nutritionist, but I'm very keen to know what a woman's iron level is like at the beginning of her pregnancy. I know it's pretty routine to check that iron level at sort of the beginning of the third trimester, but I would always check it with their booking bloods, because I'm like, if you're already low. And also I found that it was the difference as well. So, say for example, if somebody, I don't know, has a level of 30 when you test them at the beginning of the third trimester, you could look at that and go, well, that's all right. But if you knew that at the beginning they had a level of 250, and they've gone to 30, you go, oh my goodness, you are not keeping up. You're on this trajectory of being in terrible iron deficiency anemia. Whereas if you've got somebody that may have started at 35 and then by that third trimester at the beginning, they're at 30, you think, actually, they've been doing quite well keeping up with their body's needs.
Yeah.
And certainly a lot of the prescription iron supplements are problematic, which we all know. And so there certainly was some other alternatives that that are just so great. So let's tell us more about that. That would be wonderful.
Well, I'm glad you include iron in your early bloods, and I like to see it preconception. So I'm even jumping on before that because it's implicated in egg development and a lot of things. So I like to see levels are ideally around 50 to going into a pregnancy. Anything above 30 is going to be okay, but I'll ideally like to see them above 50. And you really want to be optimizing the uptake of the iron. I know a lot of prenatal supplements or prescription iron supplements, they're very harsh, they're very raw, and they're very high dose. And what they'll do is they'll turn your stool black and they'll constipate you. And that means that if that supplement is doing those things to you, then it's not in your bloodstream, it's not in your cells, it's not actually getting to where it needs to be to do its job. And the body actually has a very tight regulation of iron. Unlike some other nutrients, our body needs to regulate iron, because if we actually have too much iron, that can be very damaging. It is a heavy metal. So we really want to be taking it in a lower dose, in a well-absorbed form, to optimize that uptake, because our body regulates uptake of iron through hepcidin. If we take a massive dose of iron, our body will release hepcidin immediately afterwards, which lasts in our bloodstream about 48 hours and actually tries to block the uptake of all that extra iron because it's dangerous. So I actually recommend if we need to bump up someone's iron and it's not, as you said, cribbing up the way you'd expect it to do, and I have a lot of specialists now doing this as well, I recommend to take a good dose of iron, but take it every second day, because you're helping to stop that hepcidin blocking the uptake of that iron, because it lasts in your body about 48 hours. And really taking above 50 milligrams or even 40 milligrams of iron is generally going to cause that to be blocked. So, and again, cause constipation. So you want to do a lower dose. I recommend about 8 milligrams within a prenatal, and I generally go to about 24 to 50 occasionally if I want to see them. But the ones that have got more than that, your body's going to be blocking it. It's going to be causing constipation. You're not going to be getting it absorbed. And look for iron in the form of an amino acid chelate, which means it's already broken down into a form the body can recognize and absorb. Avoid a ferrous sulfate, which is really raw and inorganic form of iron. Ferrous fumarate, okay, but still likely causing issues. And as you said, probably the number one feedback I get from patients or, customers even swapping over to Zycia is that they feel better. They don't feel constipated. They don't feel nauseous. So even I don't care. And sometimes if they're taking their prenatal, they think, it's just morning sickness. I'm feeling nauseous. I'm feeling unwell. And then they swap prenatals and realize it was actually that was causing it. So yeah, you want it to be getting your bloodstream. It shouldn't be constipating. It shouldn't be causing nausea. If it is, wrong form or wrong dose or both.
Absolutely. And the problem there, of course, is that it can come down sometimes to what is free and then what people need to pay for.
Yeah, and that is all part of pregnancy. And again, the best investment you're ever going to make in your child's future. And a lot of these supplements, even the expensive ones that I sometimes would recommend if some people do need that little bit extra, is usually $1 a day or, $2 max. You'll spend that on a latte with no thinking. And that's something that's not doing any benefit to you or your baby. So I believe, forget the $50, school fees when they're older, get the investment in their brain development, their nutritional development. So getting adequate folate, getting adequate choline, they're showing benefits in improved learning and memory and cognition later in life. So really helping to fuel that brain growth and development, and bone growth, obviously, where vitamin D comes in important. I think that's one that we really need to touch on, because a lot of people are low in vitamin D. And I personally like to see levels around 100. And anything over 50, you'll be classified as normal. And it's also something that I take per the season because it is something that's gained from sunlight. So we really want to be looking at vitamin D. I want to see someone's vitamin D level higher at the end of summer than it is at the end of winter. If they're low at the end of summer, that is more problematic, I feel, than if they're low at the end of winter, which would kind of be reasonably understandable.
Yeah, that's complete logic.
Yeah, exactly. So, and boosting their levels again prior to pregnancy is super important, or at least during pregnancy, because vitamin D is one of the few nutrients that you can actually pass on to bub too, which is actually really difficult to treat when the newborn is out. Whereas a lot of the other nutrients bub will drain you. They'll take everything they need, leave you deplete, but they'll get what they need. Whereas vitamin D, you can pass that deficiency on, and that it's really hard to treat in the infant and can affect obviously bones, which is really important, that bone growth and development, and that can have implications throughout their childhood for that bone growth. So getting healthy vitamin D levels during pregnancy and prior to pregnancy, and they show healthy vitamin D levels affects a woman's AMH, so her egg reserve, her implications in IVF success. So healthy vitamin D is really critical. So again, aim for about 100 of vitamin D. Yeah, whereas anything over 50 and they'll tick you off as normal.
Okay, it's wonderful. We've got a couple of questions just come in that we'll get to before we move into some of those other topics. So, Tasha, could you just spell out the other name of the folate she recommends? Yep. Oh, okay, yeah.
So folic acid, obviously, is the synthetic form, but folinic acid.
That was the one, I think that, yeah. So
FOLNIC.
I'll just type that. Or do you want to just type that into the chat for them? And, or we can type the answer.
Okay, yeah.
Then everybody can see that. So is that a relatively easy thing for people to be able to pick up at a health shop?
Yes, it would be.
Is it usually combined together, the two different?
Probably not within a multivitamin, it may be, but you can get it separately as well. Folic acid. It's basically an more active form of folate. So as I was saying, it takes 4 steps in the body for folic acid to be converted into the usable folate. Whereas, so folic acid is up here, folinic acid is right here. 1 step and you're getting into your folate. So it just bypasses some of those steps up higher and is a more active form of folate. And the methylated folate is the other one I mentioned. That is the most active, but that's the one that I caution unless you know their pathways well, because it can over-methylate them. So folinic acid and folic acid, that combination, what's in Zycia prenatal. So if they're taking that, they've got it. But if they're taking your folic acid, look at a folinic as well.
Okay, and that actually brings us to the next question. And can you just show the label again of your particular supplements and just spell out the name of what it was called?
Yeah, it's probably quite a confusing name, but it's a Zycia, ZYCIA. And
ZYCIA.
Yeah, why I called it that is that it means life. And that's what I'm really passionate about fueling. It's not just about the pregnancy. It's not just about the mum or the baby. It's about life. And I find that process absolutely fascinating. The fact that 2 cells can come together and create a heartbeat, create a new life. I'm totally in awe of biology. And I think anything that we can do to help that biology along by providing those key nutrients to fuel that life, that is what, again, the best investment we can make for our child. So yeah, Zycia is pretty much what I wanted to fuel the growth of my now 8 and 5-year-olds. So yeah.
And I like your saying that it's the best investment is that first year of pregnancy.
It is. The first year of pregnancy.
The 3 months before is just so important. Yeah. And what things should women really be looking for when they're choosing a prenatal supplement?
I would always look for the form of the nutrients. So again, not the big list that they're in there, but what form is your folate? So look for folic acid and folinic acid. Look for a combination. Again, I like to fuel that folic acid. And again, I sort of mentioned a linear pathway there, but it's actually quite cyclical. So what we want to do is feed the folate pathway at a number of places. So folic acid and folinic acid and dietary sources to optimize that uptake. So I recommend the two forms, folic acid and folinic acid. Look for choline. It's not in all prenatal supplements.
Right.
So really look that yours does provide choline, because again, 90% of us aren't getting enough, and we know that it's implicated in neural tube. So it's really important for brain development. So look for the choline. I recommend 1,000 IU of vitamin D. Vitamin D is critical for getting that calcium into bones. We cannot get calcium. Vitamin D is like the little transport molecule. I joke that calcium's pretty lazy. It can't work on its own. It needs someone to carry it across the border into the bones, and vitamin D does that for us. So super important. And a lot of us aren't getting enough vitamin D. And I guess particularly concerned in the current climate, our isolation, we're not getting the sunlight that we were. So look for vitamin D, and I recommend 1,000 IU of vitamin D within your prenatal multi. Some people may need more than that, but most people 1,000 IU will be enough. Look for a good dose of vitamin B12 as well. I didn't mention that, but vitamin B12, there's a trifecta of nutrients. So folate, iron, and B12, I guess, are key nutrients for DNA development, which is obviously super critical in pregnancy. And we tend to hear about folate and iron, but we don't hear about vitamin B12. So I recommend looking for about a same dose of, 500 of your folic acid and folate, folinic acid and folic acid combination, and 500 of a B12 as well. So you really want to optimize your B12 levels, and look for iron in the form of an amino acid chelate, rather than a fumarate or a sulfate, which is in a lot of cheaper supplements. Again, with my background in product development, I can always see why I'm like, yeah, that's a cheap form of that, and that's a cheap form of that. And yeah, that's really just going to sit in your gut and cause you constipation. And yeah, so it's about getting the right forms, the right dose. So they're probably the key ones I look for. A good dose of all your B vitamins, around 10 to 30 milligrams of most of your Bs. A good dose, I recommend 2 forms of vitamin B3, which is again implicated in miscarriage. So I've got niacin and nicotinamide in mind to again optimize the uptake of vitamin B3. But yeah, they'd be your key ones to look for.
Okay, look, that is fantastic. I love the amount of detail that you're going in on those, which is really, really helpful. So can you tell us also, should women, what vitamin levels should they get checked before taking supplements?
Yep.
And, how is that best done?
Before getting pregnant, I do recommend a number of blood tests. I do love seeing blood tests. It's it's the best way to know what's going on inside the body. Yeah. So I recommend folate and homocysteine, so that we can see what the levels are doing. Is it high and not getting into the bloodstream, or is it low and the homocysteine's high? So again, you want to see your folate just above your healthy level. And homocysteine, again, I want to see it between a 6 and an 8. Ideally. Anything higher than that, and I'm considering that they're not metabolizing their folate well, or literally not getting enough folate. So look at those two. Definitely vitamin D. And again, anything other over a 50 will be ticked off by the GP, but I want to see optimal levels heading into a pregnancy. So I want to see vitamin D levels around 100 ideally. So boost their levels if they need that. So folate, homocysteine, vitamin D, vitamin B12, I generally check for them as well. They're probably the baseline nutritionals that I will recommend. If they have thyroid issues, or taking thyroxine, or had any issues with thyroid in the past, I like to get a urinary iodine as well. Just a spot iodine check is a good idea, because that's really implicated in pregnancy health. And there's also affecting their thyroid, affecting their hormones, affecting them getting pregnant. So I'm big on seeing thyroid issues, but getting a urinary iodine can be helpful for those people as well.
Absolutely wonderful. And tell us more about sort of the common journey that a woman has that is recommended through to you. And you know, I guess so often when women get to that point of dealing with infertility, do you find that you're sort of almost like, you know, the ambulance at the bottom of the cliff kind of thing, that they've done all these other things and then finally, you know, they kind of go, oh, maybe it's nutrition?
I am. That's why, look, I love things that you're doing now that actually get the information out there and educate women on what they can be and being, that's what I say, proactive in their fertility journey. Because I do, unfortunately, see people at the other end a lot of the time. Again, my number one referral is from IVF clinics. They've often been through multiple cycles, had multiple failed outcomes, and the specialists will go, look, I'm having no luck. We're not getting good quality eggs. Go and see Tasha. So look, and a lot of the time we can achieve a pregnancy. You know, I have a couple of 42 and 43-year-olds pregnant now, and they're, you know, just over the moon that we were able to optimize the health of that egg, which just wasn't getting there with IVF. And I think that's the important thing to remember with IVF, is that it does amazing things for people with blocked tubes or functional issues. You're getting the egg and sperm together in creating pregnancies that otherwise would not have been possible. But it's not a cure for age-related infertility. In fact, you know, by the time we get to our 40s, as I mentioned, in our 20s, about 25% of the eggs that we're releasing in ovulation actually aren't viable. So the fact that it takes a few months to get pregnant is not unusual, even if you're doing everything right and the sperm's there at the right time and they're all healthy. As humans, we're not like rabbits. We just aren't very good at these things. So we produce a few duds. And unfortunately, by our 40s, up to 70, 80, even 90% of those eggs are not going to be viable. So that's a lot of failed rounds of IVF. So I like to optimize the environment, optimize the quality of both the egg and the sperm. And again, sperm health, super important. I like to joke that as women, we're biologically programmed to fix up our men, to get them and then just make them a bit better. So, and we do that.
What do they say that you know, women marry men hoping to change them, and men marry women hoping they'll never change?
Yeah, exactly. And look, I believe we're biologically programmed to do that, because we literally do that at a cellular level. So the egg will actually have all these swimmers come along, millions and millions, and they will actually choose the best sperm to let in. And if the sperm...
Yes, in fact, we just had a webinar on that topic.
Oh, great.
Yeah. So it's absolutely fascinating that science is really beginning to prove this, that it's not about which swimmer is fast enough. It's also about which one the egg will allow.
Exactly, the egg will allow it. And also it has the ability to fix minor issues in the sperm. So if it's got an okay swimmer, it can actually, you know, fix that up and make that pregnancy viable. But
so we're fixing them from the get-go.
Yes, and we are fixing them from the get-go. And so what I find, but as we age, and I think as we age as women and as our eggs age, they don't have the energy to make those changes. So if we've got an older egg, so if we've got a 40 plus woman wanting to fall pregnant, I'm really looking at that partner, because we just want, I call them Olympic athletes. We just want that super swimmer that needs no fixing, no changing, that's just going to go on to create a pregnancy. Because if we've got an okay egg and an awesome sperm, then we're more likely to create a pregnancy than an okay egg and okay sperm. So we really want to fuel that sperm health as well. So yeah, we are biologically programmed to make things better.
God, we could just talk for so long. And I know that even when we met in the green room before going live, you just we're like, oh, we have to catch up with more conversation at the end. And you're such a reservoir of fantastic specific information, which is so practical. I just thought we're sort of coming towards the end, but I want to run through. Is there anything else? If anybody's got any other questions that they would particularly like to ask Tasha, please put them up now onto the Q&A. And is there anything else that you have not covered off today that you feel that we, you know, should include in this these discussions?
Well, probably looking at diet. I've obviously covered the key nutrients, and getting a prenatal is super important. But I really like to focus on the person's diet as well. And it's just the big, simple things. Soft drinks need to go, unfortunately, especially black bubbly liquid. I won't mention the name, but those sorts of things, very high in sugar. So getting a good dose of healthy fats and things as well. I see some women coming to me eating a really healthy diet, and they've just got lots of veggies, lots of salads, but okay, they've just cut out fat, or they're very restrictive diets. I'm not really big on restrictive diets. So getting a good intake, I call it color. I'll even give my patients this cheat sheet it's for kids actually, but it's got all the colors on there. So eating your blue purples, eating your reds and greens, eating your yellows and your oranges, eating a good variety of color, eating a good dose of healthy fats, so nuts and seeds and oils and fish, and your whole grains as well. So it depends. I sometimes be a bit more specific depending on what their particular issue is. I deal with PCOS and endometriosis, and I can be more specific. But in general, for most people, a good variety of colourful vegetables, whole grains, and good fats, and you've nailed it.
Well done. Well done. I noticed that Glenda, one of our attendees, has put her hand up. So Glenda, do you want to just let me know if you've got a question there? Just maybe put it onto the chat. Okay, well look, that is just so great. We're so lucky here that we've been attracting these amazing speakers like yourself. And you know what you're doing in your work is absolutely life transformational, and so you must get so much joy out of seeing the success.
I do. Seeing a healthy pregnancy is really why I do this, and getting people pregnant who have really, I've had some women coming to me who didn't even believe they could fall pregnant naturally because they'd just fallen into the IVF wagon, and to see them have a natural pregnancy and a natural birth and have them baby photos is just so heartening. So yeah, I'm glad everyone listening, and congratulations on your passion for helping people in this field too. And if you do have any more questions that we haven't covered, I do Instagram lives with a lot of specialists, and feel free to PM me, email me. I'm all hours and love helping other people, help people create babies. So if you've got any other feedback, find me on socials and feel free to send me a message.
Look, that's just wonderful. Thank you so much. And we just appreciate your time, because I know it's kind of early where you are at the moment.
It is. That's all right. I'm an early bird.
Fantastic. And we will have that follow-up. So everybody watching will get an email as well tomorrow, which again has got some really good information in there that Tasha is going to make available to you all. And of course, it'll give all her information about connecting as well. And so fantastic. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thanks for having me.
All right. I wish everybody a wonderful week, and we'll see you in a week.